A boy from Queens grows up in a brick house on a leafy street. He loves tall buildings, gold letters, and winning. He also meets debt, public failure, and a second act that shocks the world. This is the story of Donald Trump, told simply with clear English so you can learn the language while you learn the life. Part 1: Roots in Queens. It is the 1950s. The streets of Jamaica Estates, a quiet neighborhood in Queens, New York, are lined with trees. The houses are strong and square, made of red brick. In one of those houses lives a family of 7, a father, a mother, and 5 children. The fourth child, a boy with light hair and sharp eyes, is Donald. Every morning, the father, Fred, leaves early. He builds and manages apartment buildings in Brooklyn and Queens. He believes in hard work, neat clothes, and numbers that add up. The mother, Mary Ann, came to America from Scotland when she was young. Her voice has a gentle lilt. She teaches her children to be polite, to send thank you notes, and to keep the house tidy. At dinner, she tells stories about a small island and a big ocean. The children listen. From the front steps, Donald can see far away the Manhattan skyline, tall, shiny buildings like silver pencils against the sky. He likes to look at them. He likes the idea of big. Some Saturdays, Donald rides with his father to visit building sites. The car smells like leather and coffee. Fred speaks in short, firm sentences. "See that building?" he says. "It is clean. Clean means care. Care brings tenants. Tenants pay rent. Rent pays bills." They stop at a property. Fred checks the hallways. He looks at the paint, the floors, the mailboxes. He notices small things: burned out lights, a loose handle, a stain on the wall. He writes notes quickly. "Small problems become big problems," he says. "Fix them now." Donald watches and learns money is not magic. It is planning, repairs, and thousands of small choices. It is also confidence, the way his father talks to bankers and workers. Fred does not shout. He expects work to be done. On the way home, Donald looks again at Manhattan. Queens is steady and practical. Manhattan, to him, looks like a stage. 5 children means 5 voices. At the dinner table, the talk is quick. School scores, sports games, who gets the last piece of dessert. Donald likes competition. When he loses, he studies the reason. Was I too slow? Did I plan badly? How do I do better next time? His mother reminds him to be kind. "Win with grace," she says. "Lose with grace." She brushes dust from his jacket and sends him back outside to play. As Donald grows, his energy becomes stronger. In class, he talks a lot. He pushes rules. Teachers call home. His parents make a decision: military school. The school is in the countryside. Students wear uniforms. Days begin early. Beds must be tight. Shoes must shine. There is marching, drills, and a clear chain of command: cadet, captain, major. At first, Donald hates it. Then something interesting happens. The tight structure that felt heavy begins to help. With rules, his quick energy finds a direction. He plays sports. He learns to be on time. He learns to stand straight and look people in the eye. He learns how a team works and how a leader speaks: short, clear, and loud enough for the back row. On some Sundays, the family goes into Manhattan to a well-known church. The pastor talks about positive thinking, about keeping your mind on success, not failure. "See the outcome you want," the pastor says. "Walk toward it." The message fits the boy who likes the skyline. He files the idea inside his head. Think big, speak big, move big. Queens and Manhattan are one city, but they feel like different countries. Queens is where families live, where houses have lawns, where rules are quiet. Manhattan is bright, loud, and full of deals. Donald stands on the Queens sidewalk with a ball under his arm and thinks, "I live here now, but my future might be there." He starts to read the business pages of the newspaper. He cuts out photos of new buildings. He sketches towers on scrap paper, strong lines, big lobbies, shiny entrances. He likes names in stone and letters in gold. He likes the idea that a building can be both home for people and statement to the world. At military school and back home, Donald plays baseball and other sports. He likes being captain more than being just a player. He studies how to motivate people, a clap on the back, a sharp command, sometimes a joke. He learns that teams win when the rules are clear and the goal is simple: we score more. We keep the lead. Sports teach him a lesson he will use later: position matters. In baseball, where you stand before the ball is hit changes everything. In life, where you stand before a deal starts can decide the deal. Donald also learns about money in simple home words. Money comes in. Money goes out. If more goes out than comes in, you have a problem. If more comes in than goes out, you have profit. Profit means you can fix buildings, pay workers, and grow. Fred shows him a small notebook with columns. Income on the left, costs on the right. Write it down, he says. Numbers are a story. The truth is in the totals. Part 2, Learning Business, 1964 to 1971. Donald Trump left the brick house in Queens with a suitcase, a stack of clipped newspaper articles, and a private promise: learn the money game well enough to come back and play it bigger. College was the stated reason, but the real goal sat like a postcard in his mind: the Manhattan skyline, sharp and silver, waiting across the river. He began at Fordham in the Bronx, commuting past neighborhoods his father knew by the rent roll. The classes were fine, the chapel bells steady, but he felt a tug toward a room where the talk was colder and the numbers closer to the street. 2 years later, he transferred to the Wharton School in Philadelphia, a place where professors wrote equations on the board and then asked, "All right, but will it work on Tuesday afternoon when the bank calls?" He liked that kind of talk. It sounded like home. On the train between New York and Philadelphia, he read the business pages the way some people read sports. He underlined mortgage, interest, equity, vacancy, yield. Not for the test, but for the day he would stand in front of a banker and have to say the words without blinking. He kept a small notebook where he tried to reduce each big idea to one line he could remember under pressure. Numbers are a story. The truth is in the totals. Reputation lowers the price of money. He didn't know if these lines were original or borrowed from his father's voice, but they were becoming his. Wharton's case studies fit the way his mind worked. You did not start with how you felt about a building. You started with what the building could earn after you fixed what was broken. If the hallways smelled like paint thinner and old carpet, you wrote down a cleaning budget. If the roof leaked, you didn't sigh, you calculated. You ran the what-ifs until the deal survived on paper. What if rents dip? What if interest rates rise? What if 24 tenants leave? If the numbers still stood, maybe the idea could stand in the world. He liked the chain he could say in one breath: find, fix, fill, finance, profit, and the way each verb depended on the others. It was simple, but it wasn't easy. That difference interested him. The most exciting word in those years was leverage. It sounded like a tool you could hold, and it was borrowed money that let you control more than your own cash would allow. Used well, it turned a modest win into a visible success. Used poorly, it turned a small mistake into a headline. He understood both sides, at least in theory. On paper, a lever is clean. In life, it bites if you forget where the weight is. Summers were not theory. He went back to the outer boroughs, Brooklyn and Queens, and rode with his father to properties that had paid for school shoes and Sunday dinners. The work smelled like latex paint and new tile, not like gloss. In boiler rooms and basements, he learned to read the signs. A burned-out light meant a hallway people avoided. A broken mailbox meant angry tenants. A sloppy lobby meant money quietly leaking out the back. His father's standard was simple enough to embarrass you. If you wouldn't live here yourself, you're not done. They were not building palaces, but pride was cheaper than repairs, and it showed up in the bottom line. He watched his father in banks and noticed how discipline turned into credit. On time meant on time. Papers meant neat. Claims meant receipts. Fred Trump did not sell charm. He sold track record. When a loan officer asked a question, he answered it once with the number and the document, and then sat in the silence. The message was clear without being said. You can trust a man who is not in a hurry to impress you. The son wrote another line in his notebook, speed for construction, patience for financing, and wondered if he would remember it when a bigger room was watching. There was also a long lesson far from New York that shaped his thinking. The family owned a sprawling apartment complex in Ohio, the kind of place every landlord says is stable until the mailboxes start filling with forwarding notices. It had empty units, tired paint, and a mood that made people move out, then tell their friends not to move in. He spent time there not as a prince, but as a manager who had to sign off on repairs and deal with the ordinary weather of complaints. He learned that a property can feel sick without a single broken bone, and that the medicine is often simple. Fix the first 5 things people see, brighten the entrance, clean like you mean it, and train the person at the front desk to greet a stranger as if rent depends on it, because it does. None of that sounds like finance, but it all becomes finance once the month ends. Back in Philadelphia, his classes gave language to what he was seeing on site. Demand is a feeling turned into a number. A lobby is not only marble or tile, it's a signal about safety and status that shows up in rent. A sign on the corner isn't just a marker, it's marketing. He began to argue, first in his head, then at the dinner table, that strong came first, but style mattered. His father's eye went to boilers, roofs, and elevators, the bones of a building. His eye increasingly went to entrances, light, and letters you could see from across the street. He didn't have the power to change the family formula yet, but he was developing a taste for places that announced themselves. He also studied the city like it was a chessboard with strange rules. In New York, one block can be worth double the next for reasons that make sense only when you walk them. He walked them. He learned where crowds slow down for window displays, where office workers spill out at lunch, where a side street feels safe at 9 at night because of a bakery's light, and a porter who keeps the sidewalk clean. He stood on corners and tried to feel the flow because it mattered. In sports, he had learned that where you stand before the ball is hit changes your chances. In property, he decided that where you stand before you build changes the whole game. Position was not poetry, it was price. When he finally graduated and came home full-time, he did not step into a Fifth Avenue tower. He stepped into a chair at a family desk and a phone that rang about broken radiators and late contractors. He managed small crews, checked invoices, and learned the difference between a promise and a delivery. He kept the rent roll tight and visited buildings at night with a flashlight, the way his father had done, to see what the day shift missed. He liked the feeling of solving something you could touch. He liked even more the moment when a set of small fixes showed up as a higher number in the ledger. That was a kind of applause he trusted. He also began to look across the river with a more dangerous confidence. Manhattan had always been the poster on his wall. Now it was a puzzle he wanted to try with his own hands. He started showing up to conversations where he was younger than the room and talking about sites he couldn't control yet. He didn't pretend to be what he wasn't. He couldn't have, not with people who could smell a bluff, but he spoke clearly about what he would do if he got the chance. Take a tired property with a perfect address, make it both solid and spectacular, and then let the address and the show sell each other. He was not yet the man whose name would go on the awning, but he had begun to think like a man who believed it could. The years between 1964 and 1971 did not give him fame or headlines. They gave him habits. He learned to ask for facts before feelings, totals before theories. He learned that banks listen to stories told in numbers, and that numbers get better when the stairwells are clean. He learned that a lever will move a world if you mind where you place it, and that a bad lever will crush your foot if you don't. He learned that the first 10 seconds in a lobby can change a rent by 10%, and that 10% repeated over 300 doors changes the future of a block. Most of all, he learned his own appetite. The outer boroughs were steady and profitable. He respected them, but the skyline across the water still called to him like a dare. He wanted a building that would make people stop and look up, and he wanted the deal behind that building to work on paper on a Tuesday afternoon when the bank called. Strong first, then style. Numbers that add, letters that shine. In those quiet, formative years, he practiced both the math and the theater and told himself that one day he would find a corner of Manhattan where the two could meet. Part 3. First Big Bet in Manhattan, the Grand Hyatt, 1975 to 1980. He had spent years learning the quiet math of buildings: find, fix, fill, finance. Now he wanted a stage. Manhattan was the prize, and one address kept pulling at him: a tired old hotel called the Commodore, pressed up against the east wall of Grand Central Terminal on 42nd Street. The location was perfect. The hotel was not. The carpets were worn, the lobby felt dark, the rooms looked like a past that New York was trying to forget. The city itself was hurting. New York had almost gone bankrupt in the mid-1970s. Stores closed. Crime rose. People said Manhattan's best days were behind it. He did not believe that. He believed the city would come back, and he wanted to bet on that return at a spot where every traveler could see it. If you could take a property that everyone thought was dying and make it shine, you would not just make money, you would announce yourself. He started with a simple question: who actually controlled this broken hotel? The answer was a tangle. Railroad companies in bankruptcy court, banks holding pieces of paper, a city government desperate for jobs and tax revenue, but afraid of risk. He began making calls and visits, one by one, to people who could say yes or no. He was young for these rooms. Some people smiled at the boldness, others looked past him like he was a kid who had wandered into the adult table. He kept talking.
He used plain sentences and big promises: fix the hotel, bring in a respected operator, fill the rooms, create work, bring life back to 42nd Street. He did not ask the city to love him.
He asked it to do a deal. A partner would make the plan believable, so he went looking for one with a strong name in hotels. He found it in Hyatt. Hyatt knew service, reservations, brand standards, and how to run a lobby that felt alive at midnight. They were cautious. The property looked rough. The debt would be heavy. But the location was a magnet, and the pitch was simple: side by side with Grand Central, thousands of commuters walking past, tourists stepping off trains, business travelers crossing the marble. Every morning, if the hotel could look like the future instead of the past, people would choose it. Money was the next gate. Banks were nervous then. The city's problems made every spreadsheet shake. He needed to lower the risk for lenders and investors, and that meant lowering the cost of carrying the building. He pushed for a long property tax break, the kind that could turn a thin deal into a workable one.
He framed it not as a gift but as a trade. The city would collect less in property tax for a while, but it would get construction jobs now, hotel jobs later, room tax and sales tax money from this.
Guests and a brighter block that would lift nearby stores. He took that message into government offices again and again until a path opened. It was a complicated structure with public agencies and private money, but the effect was clear: the hotel could breathe while it rebuilt. With paper moving through offices and lawyers marking up drafts, he turned to the part he loved: how the place would feel. He did not want a quiet facelift. He wanted a transformation people could see from across the avenue. The plan was to strip the old skin and wrap the building in a new glass exterior that mirrored the sky by day and the city lights by night. It was a bold move for that corner. Next to the stone and iron of Grand Central, a wall of mirror glass would shout new in a part of town known for old. Some said it would clash. He thought it would announce a comeback. Inside, the plan was just as simple: make first impressions do the heavy lifting. A brighter entrance, a lobby that moved, bars and restaurants with a little theater, rooms that felt clean and modern rather than fussy and tired. He had watched his father fix the first 5 things people see in a building. Here he would push that idea to the limit. He wanted the first 10 seconds to sell the next 2 nights. Construction began. The hotel closed and the crews moved in. It was not smooth. Old buildings hide surprises, pipes in the wrong place, beams that need reinforcing, walls that crumble as soon as you touch them. Budgets shake when that happens, schedules slip. He was on site often, walking through dust with drawings in his hand, making small decisions that would add up to the feeling he wanted. He had opinions about stone colors and light levels, about where a guest's eye should go when the elevator doors opened, about how a bartender's smile would look against a dark back bar. People learned that he would ask for more shine, more drama, more reasons to take out a camera. The facade became the signature. When the glass panels started to go up, the whole block seemed to shift. The gray mass of the old building began to reflect the sky. Taxi roofs flashed across the surface like goldfish. Commuters used the windows as mirrors and fixed their ties. This was the point: make people feel something when they pass, then they will want to come in. Meanwhile, he kept pressure on the numbers. Hyatt would run the hotel, but the deal only worked if certain targets were hit: occupancy, average room rate, restaurant checks. He tracked them as if they were personal test scores. He pushed for opening offers to pull in business travelers and for events that would put the new name in the paper. He understood that you do not just open a building, you launch it. When the doors finally opened in 1980 under the new flag, the Grand Hyatt New York, the building did what it was supposed to do. It changed the mood of the corner. Guests walked into the lobby and looked up. Travelers checked in because the price was good for the location and the rooms looked fresh. Locals met for drinks because the space felt like something was happening there. The mirrored skin caught late light and bounced it onto the sidewalk, and for a moment, people forgot the city's long slump. There were critics, of course. Some thought the glass was too brash next to a beloved train station. Others said the tax deal was too generous for a private developer. From his view, the building was full, the staff had jobs, and a block that had felt tired now felt alive. The city had taken a chance and gotten a result. In business, he had been taught, results are the answer. More important than press or praise was what the project taught him about Manhattan. It taught him that a great address with a broken body can be revived if you bring capital, a brand, and a clear idea of how people want to feel in a space. It taught him that public-private deals are possible when each side can tell a success story to its audience. It taught him that style can lift price when the bones are sound. And it taught him that one visible win in the right place is worth a stack of quiet wins elsewhere, because it changes how people see you. There were also warnings baked into the win. The debt was heavy, the partnership terms mattered, the public promises had to be met. He saw how a big lever multiplies not just gains, but stress. He saw how a building that shouts can attract critics as well as guests. He decided he could live with both. For a young developer who had grown up staring at the skyline from a Queens sidewalk, the Grand Hyatt was more than a hotel. It was a door. On one side was the careful world he had learned in boiler rooms and bank offices. On the other side was the bright stage of Midtown, where image and numbers had to dance together without stepping on each other's feet. He had proved at least once that he could make them dance. After the opening, he would often stand across the street at dusk and watch the glass turn from blue to black as the rooms lit up one by one. Each square of light was a guest and a little piece of proof. The bet on Manhattan had paid off. The city was not done. Neither was he. Part 4, Trump Tower and the Brand of Bigger. He didn't just want a building, he wanted a stage. A place where the door handles, the light, the echo of the atrium would all say the same word: bigger. Off to the Grand Hyatt, he looked south along Fifth Avenue and saw the next step, a famous shopping block where people stopped to take photos, where taxi doors kept opening, where the address alone could sell. The old department store on the corner was fading. The site was perfect. If the first bet in Midtown had been about bringing a hotel back to life, this one would be about making a tower that doubled as a headline. The plan sounded simple and impossible at the same time. Replace the tired store with a tall, sharp, glass and bronze tower that mixed shops, offices, and luxury apartments. Carve a 6-story atrium into its heart, fill that atrium with light, escalators, and a waterfall, then wrap it all in a look that would be recognized from a single photograph. That last part mattered. New York has good buildings no one can picture. He wanted a building people could draw from memory. To make the numbers work, he used a tool the city offered: extra buildable space in exchange for giving something back to the public. The something would be a privately owned public space, an indoor plaza open to everyone, a place to sit, look, and pass through, plus a clear, welcoming passage from the sidewalk into that space. It wasn't charity, it was a trade. He would get more floor area to sell. The city would get a new, weatherproof corner of Fifth Avenue where anyone could step inside, warm up, cool down, or simply watch the show. He obsessed over first impressions. From the street, the entrance would present itself like a camera shot: tall doors, clean glass, a name you could read from across the avenue. Inside, the atrium would rise in layers, retail glinting on the edges, balconies stepping back, escalators carrying people up like a slow parade. The waterfall would do what waterfalls always do in a city: pull eyes, soften noise, and make the air feel more expensive than it is. He wanted the lobby to sell the apartments before a broker said a word. Where his father's eye had gone to boilers and roofs, his own eye now went to materials and angles. The palette leaned warm, stone that caught the light, metal that read as gold even when it wasn't, surfaces that photographed well. He pushed for shine, because shine telegraphs care. He pushed for symmetry where he could get it, and drama where he couldn't. He wanted a building that would never look sleepy at noon on a gray day. Deals, not decorations, decide the fate of a tower. So he lined up the crucial pieces: a luxury store at street level to draw steady foot traffic, offices above with tenants who liked the address as much as the floor plan, apartments higher up with views to the park and the skyline, homes that weren't just places to sleep but trophies to own. Each group helped the others. The retail made the atrium busy. The crowd made the offices feel central. The buzz made the apartments easier to sell. He liked flywheels, systems that spin faster once they start, and he wanted this tower to be one. He also leaned into psychology. New Yorkers and visitors count by story, not just by square foot. Numbers on elevator panels set expectations. He played with that the way many developers did and do, compressing service floors, skipping the unlucky, giving the high units higher-sounding numbers, because the feeling of height sells height. The brand of bigger isn't only about inches, it's about experience. Long escalator rides that lift you past the crowd, ceilings that stretch, hallways that make a person straighten their back without knowing why. The building rose in the early 1980s, a vertical announcement in bronze and glass. Construction is never smooth. Old utilities hide under sidewalks, delivery schedules slip, neighbors complain, and the press circles. There were controversies he learned to absorb, and choices like tearing down the old store that drew critics as well as supporters. But the frame climbed, the skin went on, and Fifth Avenue got a new mirror. By the time the tower opened, the atrium did exactly what he hoped. It turned walking into lingering. Tourists took photos of the waterfall. Shoppers rode the escalators just to see the view from the next level. Office workers took meetings in the cafe because it felt central and a little theatrical. Residents floated above it all, riding private elevators to apartments with skyline angles you couldn't get on a low block. The tower sold more than space, it sold a story about success. The name on the glass, bold, centered, shiny, wasn't just labeling. It was a logo, a signal that the product inside aimed higher, charged more, and promised a feeling, you have arrived. He found that if the lobby looked like a magazine spread, people would pay like it was one. If the concierge greeted like a maitre d', tenants felt VIP, even on a Tuesday. If the mailroom didn't look like a mailroom, deliveries felt like gifts. The brand of bigger came down to small, repeatable cues that kept the promise at every turn. The atrium's public status taught him a second, subtler lesson. Spectacle is a kind of marketing you don't have to buy. You create a place people want to visit and photograph, then their footsteps and snapshots carry your name out into the world for free. A newscast needs a backdrop. Offer a polished one. A charity needs a venue. Post it under the balconies. A celebrity needs a visible entrance. Make sure the cameras have room to breathe. The building became not only an address, but a backdrop for other people's stories. That, too, was part of the plan. Of course, the risks that come with bigger never go away. Bigger loans mean bigger interest checks. Bigger visibility means bigger target. Bigger promises mean louder complaints if anything falls short. He had to keep tenants happy, keep the retail rotating, keep the atrium lively, and keep the myth from outrunning the math. You don't just build a brand like that, you maintain it every day in 1,000 little ways someone could point to and say, that's slipping. He pushed staff to keep edges sharp, lights working, stone unmarred. The shine had to survive real life. Standing on the sidewalk in those first months, it was easy to see what the tower had done for him. The Grand Hyatt had proven he could revive a corner. This tower proved he could define one. Fifth Avenue is full of famous neighbors, yet the building held its own in photographs. Reporters who wrote about business now also wrote about image. Magazines that covered fashion used the atrium as a set. Investors who once asked for bank statements now asked for collaboration. In a city where attention is the rarest currency, the tower paid out daily. Later, years later, an escalator ride inside the atrium would become a political image known around the world. That moment wasn't in the original pro forma, but it fit the logic that shaped the place. Build a stage and you can step onto it for any act. Real estate, media, and personal brand could feed each other if the stage was big enough and bright enough. That was the deeper engine of bigger, not just square footage, but a loop. Attention creates value, value attracts attention, and the cycle keeps spinning as long as you keep delivering something people want to see, use, or own. If you strip away the gold and the camera flashes, the core remains something he'd learned in boiler rooms and bank lobbies. First, make it solid, then make it shine. The tower's bones allowed the theater lifted the numbers kept the doors open. He liked to stand across the avenue at dusk and watch the glass darken while the interiors warmed. Each tiny square of light was a life, someone changing for dinner, someone answering a last email, someone leaning on a balcony to see the river. Those lights were also proof that the promise had closed. The brand had done its job. Trump Tower was not just a project on a timeline, it was a template. It showed him that in Manhattan, a building can be a product and a billboard at the same time, a place to live and a story to tell. It taught him that the word bigger is made from many small, precise choices. Choices about how a door swings, how an escalator lands, how a name sits on glass, how a number on an elevator panel makes. Aber viel teuer. It confirmed that if you want the city to say your name, you don't whisper it, you build it. And once it's built, you keep it shining.